Hello everyone, in today's video we're going to be taking a look at this neat add-on called Fly the Beam, which gives you the ability to actually use beam navigation in any aircraft. Now the reason I think this is so cool is you can basically convert any airplane into a 1930s, 1940s, basically let's go kind of a situation. So it's actually kind of a neat thing. So let's go ahead and get started. So first things first, when you activate the application itself, it's a simple little Python. It's a pre-compiled to make your life pretty easy. You're going to get a display that looks a little bit like this. It's going to say Fly the Beam after it puts up a big scary command thing. Over here, you have your station select. Over here on the right, you have your volume. You have start listening. You have this nice little plot button here. So the first problem you're going to have is what station am I going to be listening to? That's definitely going to be an interesting problem at first, but as you'll see, it's actually not as bad as you want. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull down a little nav map. This is going to work great for us for this purpose. And what I've done is I've selected the radio station right here, HT. This is Hotel Tango. It's a frequency of 329 degrees. You can see I've already dialed in that 329 degrees. Now the way that these work is you have two different Morse code tones generated. One's going to be a little bit shorter, one's going to be a little bit longer. What's going to happen is you're going to be listening to those sounds, and as the sounds become more combined in your ears because of the way that they're out of phase with each other, it's going to become more obvious to actually figure out where you are. If you're looking for a sort of a visual, this is another great way to see it. If you are to the left of the beam itself, you're going to be hearing single boop, boop, boop. If you're to the right, you're going to be hearing the longer boop, boop, boop. And what's going to happen is when you combine these dots with these dashes, or dot and dis, if you prefer, you're going to hear one continuous tone that's going to look exactly like this. So what you're doing as a pilot is if you hear the short tones, it means you need to come to the right. If you hear the long tones, it means you need to come to the left. If you hear a combination of the long and short tones, the Morse code here, it means you're perfectly set up in riding the beam itself. Now, what are the optional courses? Well, one of the nice things about this tool is if you click on the plot button, what it will do is open up this like super duper fun little turtle thing here. It'll actually draw out all the possible courses. Now, if you want to think about it another way, go ahead and put this right here so you can see it a little bit better visually. You can see that these are different choices. One of the things you have to watch out for when we pick these choices is the fact that the T indicates that we're dealing with a true course, which means whatever you're heading the plane at, you have to remember that you have to add in magnetic deviation. So in our particular case, we're here in lovely Connecticut. Our magnetic deviation is 14 degrees to the west. West is best. 50 plus 14 equals 64 degrees, which means if we were traveling this way, we'd be looking at a 64 degrees. If we're coming this way, we'd be adding a little bit closer to, like I said, 247. Plus 14 is going to get you a whopping angle that's going to give you, I believe that's 261 is what you're going to be looking at here. So now, what does that mean to us? That means if we're interested in following this radial here, we're going to have to go ahead and establish a course that's going to bring us onto it. So let me go ahead and I'll show you what we have here. So what I've done is I've already drawn out this radial using appropriate techniques. So right now you can see that our aircraft here is actually chilling to the south of this radial. Now what's going to happen, or beam if you prefer it, as we get closer, what you're going to hear in your ears is going to be a single, this is going to be obviously the short, this is going to be the E. So if I press this, oop, I didn't mean to press plot. Give it a second to go ahead and finish up its little piece here. And then we'll go ahead and hit listen this time as opposed to plot. Let's move this out to the side. And let's hit listen. Do you hear the A? So short long is A. And you can see we're on the A side. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and make this airplane go on to the north side of the beam. So what I'm going to do is get my best friend Slew here. Whee! And stop. All right, so now if you take that little nav map here, you can see that we are well north of the course. Now if you listen, see how we have long short and the other south side with short long? Now if you combine long short with short long, you get a continuous tone. So watch what happens as I get closer and closer to the actual point at which that crosses. I'm going to press Y first, pop back over here so you can see it in action. Actually won't be able to because of the way it works, but just listen. There. So you hear, because the aircraft is now having the A on this side and the N on the north side, when you're converting the short long with the long short, you hear a continuous tone. So now let's move even closer to the correct course. Here it's a continuous tone. That means you're on the beam. So all we have to do now as a pilot is navigate so that that continuous tone remains continuous. If we hear short, long, that means we're too far to the left. If we hear long, short, we're too far to the north. So let's go ahead and set up our little course here and see how accurately we can follow the beam. Bring the sucker around. Like again, we're dealing with the 261. And we're going to go ahead and press heading hold. And we're going to go ahead and unpause. We'll pop over to little nav map so you can see what it looks like in action. And just listen. Here you can still hear a little bit of that long short, which means we're too far to the right. So what I'll do is I'll order up a little bit of a left turn here. And again, just listen. Here it's becoming more continuous. That means we're getting progressively closer and closer and closer to being exactly on the beam. Ready? Almost perfect. So now one of the neat quirks about these radio systems and about the old beam navigation is the fact that as we get over the actual station itself, all the sound will suddenly cut out. And that will be the clue that you need to change your course. So we'll let this come down a little more. Notice how continuous it is. We're almost perfectly on it. And perfect. So let's go ahead and now bring ourselves back closer to original course. And now because that sound is constant, that means this aircraft is now traveling perfect. We have a bit of a crosswind here, so what I'm actually going to do is get rid of that. Oh, we don't need live weather. Clear skies, that makes it a little bit simpler for us. Now listen what happens as we proceed along this course here. Notice we're slightly off to the left. Even though it sounds continuous, we're actually getting a slight bias to one side. So what I'll do now is I'll speed up time a little bit. And just continue to listen. So as long as that sounds perfect in our ears, we are on course to this beam. Take a look at nav map again. Obviously we're dealing with no wind, no turbulence. See how you're starting to get that short? If you look at a little nav map, you can see how we're starting to shift slightly to the left of the course that we're looking to go at. And you can actually hear that in our ears as we're approaching it. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to come to the right just a teeny tiny bit here and see if we can reset it. Now, the next thing you're probably noticing is the fact it's getting tremendously loud. The reason it is starting to get loud is because we're starting to get much closer to the station. So now here's the most fun part of all when you're using beam navigation. That is the symbol that you have crossed the station and you're ready to proceed off course. Now, if we wanted to at this time, I could go back to my little plot command here and I could bring up that other course that kind of brings us off to the north. But as long as we are in this kind of dead zone right now, we're not going to be able to see anything too well. So let's say we want to now take the 129 or true course. 129 plus 14, a magnetic deviation is going to be 143. So all I have to do now is grab 143. Go ahead and dial that in real quick. Oh, not 143, I'm sorry. 323, my bad. And you're going to start hearing the beeps and boops again. And there we are. And now if we wanted to, we can now drive away from this station, taking advantage of that so much louder. Let me turn it down. So now what we could do is now we've crossed where that station is, we can now proceed away from that course using the exact same technique that we did before. Again, using the combination of the left. Again, short, long means we're too far to the right. Long, short means we are too far to the right. And once we get that nice continuous tone again, that means we're now going away from the station. It would simply be a matter of dialing in our next radio station and then approaching to that position. So hopefully you found this form of navigation interesting. Like I said, it's definitely unique. I think it's a nice little challenge for people who have done a lot of traditional navigation and are looking for something a little extra challenging. We've tried this in the DC6, but that's for another video. Enjoy.